So in that last section, we spoke about the change that we're going to make to our application. We're going to create a new component. So let's first create a new file inside of our project directory to house this new component. And then after that, we'll start thinking about how we're going to put this together. All right, so I'm going to create a new file inside of my SRC directory, and I'm going to call this, I don't know, user card.js. So let's put some boilerplate in to set up our component. And we will import React from React, and we will create our user card component. And this will be a functional component. So then at the bottom, we're going to immediately put down that export default statement so that we can make use of this component in other locations inside of our project. All right, so now we need to start thinking about that JSX inside of this user card component. So again, we're going to borrow some super styling from that semantic UI library so we don't have to worry about doing a whole bunch of CSS. And let's just make the card with buttons underneath of it. And then we can start to think about how we're going to insert some custom content inside of that. All right. So inside of my user card component, I'm going to put down a return statement. Then I'll do a div with a class name, UI card. Now inside of it, I'll do a div with the class name of content. That's where our ultimate content is going to go. Now we're going to place some text inside of here. So I'm going to place a div with a class name of header, and I'll say Alex Tancredi as an author of this post. Please don't let Alex know that I'm doing this. I don't think he's going to be taking this class, but you never know. So underneath of it, I'll add a description with the div class name of description, and I'll add some text inside of it, just so that we can see that things are working out the way we expect. So finally, under this div class name of content, I will do another div with the class name of UI button. And then we're going to put our button in here. Now, I hope you notice that we have a plus icon inside of our button before the button text. So first we're going to add that icon with the icon tag and give it a class name of add icon. Immediately after, we will put the text add friend. Cool. So make sure that you don't have any typos inside that block of JSX that we just put together. All right, so that looks good. Now we've got this component put together. So let's save this file and go back to index.js. And we're going to import the user card and just show a single instance of it inside of the app component. And then at the top, I'll add another import statement for user card. And I'm going to import this from the current directory, and I will say /user card. Then inside of my app component, right underneath that existing div that we have, I'll say user card. Cool. Then I can save the file and flip back over to the browser, and let's have a look. Okay, so it seems pretty good. So we now want to show this single comment inside of our user card, just as we saw on our mockup. But we don't want to use the user card to always show a single detail. If we did that, we'd then lose out on some of the reusability within that user card. For example, we couldn't, reuse it to show some arbitrary text inside of there. like this. So now we're going to do this. Well, we're going to make use of a great little feature in the prop system. Now, again, by this point, we've only discussed props as being some property name equals and then the value that you pass directly to a component inside of the component tag, like that right here. But there is another way that we can communicate information into a child component. Let me show you how I do it. So right now, right here, we have a user card as a self-closing tag right here, right? So I'm going to update this so that it no longer has a self-closing tag. So I'm just going to delete that /, and then I'm going to put a closing tag on the other side, like so. Now the syntax right here shouldn't look so crazy. It's essentially the same syntax that we use whenever we create a div, but we have the opening tag and then the closing tag. So to communicate this component down to the user card and tell the user card that we want to show the single comment, we're going to take this closing tag right here. I'll put it on the other side of the single comment, and then I'm going to indent the single comment. All right? So we're now taking this single comment component and we're passing it as a props down to and into this user card. We would refer to this as props as well because we are providing some configuration to the user card component. And when we pass this thing in user card, we now have to open up our user card component. And remember that every function that we put together receives a first argument that we refer to as props. So that means the component that we just passed as some configuration to this thing now exists on this props object. Now, before we make use of it inside this file, I want to console log that props just to show you exactly what happens. Now flip back over to the browser. All right, so we have two warnings right here. First, we have an extra import statement inside the single comment component that we are not using anymore. And of course, the second one, it says you don't have to say picture or anything like that inside of an image tag. So let's remove that. Okay, save and flip back to the browser. Now notice that we are now missing one of the three comments that we had before. So why don't we take a look at the console log of that props object? And what do you notice? That the props object now has a single property inside of it called children. So we'll just ignore that underscore proto that's not related to any React stuff. So we can expand that children object right there. Now this right here is our single comment component. So essentially, when we pass one component to another, the child component, in this case, single comment, is going to show up inside of the user card on a property of the props object called the children property. So now we can show that thing inside the body of our user card for us in particular. We're going to replace this text with the whatever's coming over on props.children. And I'm going to put props.children in curly braces because we want to reference that JavaScript variable. And then I'm going to remove that console log. So now I'll save this and let's flip back over to the browser. And what do you see? That my single comment is now showing up inside of the user card just as we intended. That's the way we do it when we want to make reusable components. So if we ever want to show some component or content inside of a component, we'll take the child, wrap it with a parent component, and then that child component is going to show up inside of it with the props.children property. Yeah, you got it? That's cool. So that's how we create some reusable components. So I think we need a little bit more practice, so let's wrap the other two single comment components with a user card. I'm just going to find the second single comment, and I'm going to wrap it with a user card. Then I'll do the same thing for the third comment as well. All right. So now I can save this, and then I'll just flip back over, and we can see that all three comments are now being rendered inside of a user card. So now, this is what I would call the benefit of this approach that we used here. We can set up a user card to take some arbitrary child into it. So why don't we try it out right now? Let's put a user card at the very top, and then I'm going to pass to it some plain text. I'll say, hello, my name is Sarah, and I live in Istanbul. Notice here that we don't have to pass in a React component. You see that? We can put plain text as well. So now I can save this, and we'll just see that we have a new card at the top that says simply, hello, my name is Sarah, and I live in Istanbul. Okay, you got it? That's it. So the one key thing to keep in mind here is that whenever we want to use this technique, we always have to make sure that we go into that target component. I could say it slower, but it would hurt. So in this case, the user card, and we just have to make sure that somewhere it references the props.children inside of there. Now, if we don't reference props.children, then the child that we pass to the parent will never show up inside. All right, let's take a quick break, and I'll see you in the next lecture.